Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into the soft, dust-lit dawn of ancient Rome, where the streets breathe before the people do, and where you, half awake and already regretting the day ahead, start to understand what hygiene truly meant in a world without soap, privacy, or the luxury of pretending your neighbours don't smell exactly like you do. The air is warm even at sunrise, carrying that familiar blend of oil, smoke, damp stone, and something you can only describe as Roman mystery aroma. And trust me, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, let me know your location and your local time in the comments. I always love seeing where everyone is listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin your morning squeezed inside a modest insula, one of Rome's towering apartment blocks that gives affordable housing a whole new meaning. The walls are so thin you can hear your upstairs neighbour stretching, coughing, and dropping something that absolutely should not bounce but somehow does. The room smells faintly of straw, last night's food, and just a whisper of mildew. The sort of aroma Romans barely noticed because everything around them carried its own scent story anyway. Your mattress is a lumpy sack stuffed with whatever the landlord could find: chaff, straw, fabric scraps, and a surprising amount of dust. As you swing your legs over the side, you feel the grit under your feet. Rome isn't filthy the way modern people imagine, but it is dusty, smoky, and alive in a way that clings to your skin before you even step outside. You push open the shutters. Warm air flows in immediately. Even at sunrise, the city radiates heat from stones that never truly cool. Below, the street is already stirring, carts creaking, merchants muttering, and the distant splash of someone dumping wastewater into the gutter. It's the Roman version of an alarm clock. You take a breath, and there it is. The layered aroma of Rome: olive oil, livestock, bread ovens, smoke, and a hint of something sharper drifting up from the street drains. Historians still argue whether Romans were impressively clean or sneakily dirty, because they bathed obsessively, but also lived among constant urban chaos. That debate flows right into this moment as you lean out the window and realise, yes, the city is alive, but it's not what you'd call fresh. Your first task is simply getting yourself moving in the cramped space. There's no bathroom, no private wash basin, nothing resembling a modern sink. You splash your face with a little water kept in a clay jug, a precious supply you carried up from the fountain yesterday. It's cool and glittery in the morning light, but not truly clean by today's standards. Roman water is famous for its aqueducts, but once it sits still overnight, dust, insects, and little flecks of stone settle to the bottom. You rub sleep from your eyes and shake your hands dry because, fun fact, Romans didn't generally use towels. They used strigils later at the bathhouse, but right now it's just a flick-shake hope for the best situation. A neighbour passes your open door and offers a breezy salve, stepping carefully to avoid brushing the walls. That's the thing most modern visitors forget. These apartments were small, cramped, and often slightly grimy no matter how hard families tried. Charcoal fires left soot on ceilings, cooking oil splattered where it wanted, and the thin floors between levels never kept their own odours to themselves. You get used to it, or at least you pretend to. You grab a tiny flask of scented oil, a luxury but not an uncommon one. Romans didn't deodorize the way we do, but they certainly masked. A little oil rubbed onto the neck and wrists helps cut down the scent of being alive in the world's busiest city. It's part grooming, part ritual, part self-defense. And yes, it works surprisingly well until midday, when the sun decides everyone should smell like warmed humanity. As you tie your shoes, you hear the rhythmic splash of the fountain down the street. That's where you're headed next, because a Roman morning begins with water the same way it begins with noise. The fountain is a communal gathering point, legally required to run thanks to the aqueduct system. Engineers built them so water constantly flows, making the city feel almost luxurious, except when you notice that the drainage channels beneath them carry away every kind of runoff imaginable. A quirky little historical detail. Romans often tossed coins, scraps, or even tiny curses into fountains, not wishing for luck but asking the local nymphs to keep the water flowing clean. Did it work? Historians still argue whether Romans genuinely believed the spirits maintained hygiene, or if it was just a habit, like knocking wood today. You step into the street and feel the warmth rising from the stones. A baker pushes open his shutters, and the smell of early bread fights valiantly against the scent of the tanners across the lane. Somewhere above, a bucket tips and releases a small shower of something. You've learned to avoid the splash zone. The street is narrow, uneven, and busy already. You keep your chin tucked slightly, not from shame, but because carts rumble by with zero concern for pedestrians. These streets were built for movement, not comfort, and that includes the water running in narrow gutters. You step around it cautiously, because everything in it, from dye waste to bathhouse runoff, tells its own hygiene story. At the fountain, people are already gathering, women filling jugs, a few children splashing each other, and the neighbourhood's early gossipers swapping tidbits about whose laundry still smells like smoke. You dip your hands into the cold flow, rinsing off the last of the night. The water tastes good, surprisingly good, when you sip a little from your palm, crisp and fresh from miles away. And for a moment, you get the illusion that Rome has everything under control, just don't look down into the drainage channel. A friend greets you, handing you a tiny pot of oil he mixed himself. A blend of herbs, nothing fancy, but enough to help keep your skin hydrated against the dusty wind later. Romans loved small personal touches like this, a reminder that hygiene wasn't just survival, it was social glue. As you stand at the fountain, sunlight rising and the city warming around you, you feel it. The day hasn't officially begun, but Rome already smells like itself, complex, imperfect, alive. You leave the fountain with your clay jug half full and your shoulders not quite awake yet, stepping into the slow-motion chaos of early Roman morning. The water sloshes gently against the sides, cool against your palm, and you feel a small, smug sense of accomplishment. Because fetching water before the rush means you avoided the long lines and the inevitable arguments about who cut in front of whom. You've seen more than one shouting match break out over a single turn at the spout. Your street is already glowing with that soft Roman sun that makes everything, stone, dust, faces, look a little warmer than it feels. You navigate around a man sweeping his threshold, sending little swirls of last night's grit into the air. This is one of those understated hygiene habits Romans took seriously, keeping the area right in front of your home relatively clean, not spotless, not remotely sanitary by modern standards, but swept enough to keep the worst filth from turning into a permanent resident. You tighten your grip on the jug. It's heavier than you want it to be. Water is precious, but drinking it isn't even the main concern. Storing it is. That, you're reminded every morning, is the real challenge. Aqueducts supply water generously, but once it exits the pipes and sits in clay jars inside your apartment, it begins to age in ways that modern city dwellers would not tolerate. A thin film sometimes forms on the surface. Sediment collects at the bottom. Dust drifts in, because dust drifts into everything in Rome. Still, you trust the water source more than you trust whatever leaks from upper floors into the street gutters. And you definitely trust it more than the stagnant pools that gather in low spots when it rains. Fun fact: Romans knew stagnant water was dangerous but didn't fully understand why. They just avoided it, like you avoid that one co-worker who microwaves fish in the office kitchen. You tuck the jug close to your chest as a cart rattles by, dragged by a pair of donkeys who, despite their best intentions, do not refrain from adding their personal contributions to the hygiene situation. Those contributions land directly onto the street stones where they wait for luck, time, or someone with sandals thick enough to not care. You step aside carefully, lifting your hem. Rome may be powerful, rich, and culturally unmatched, but street cleaning is not its passion. As you head toward your building, you pass a woman scrubbing her hands with leftover olive oil from last night's cooking, a trick many Romans used when water was scarce. It leaves a slick finish, but lifts grime surprisingly well. She nods at you, and you catch that faint scent of garlic rising from her fingertips. It's strangely comforting, as if even hygiene here has its own flavour profile. You pass another fountain, smaller, tucked between two shops, and a group of slaves filling amphora. Their masters rely on them to lug water across the city, a tiring, repetitive job that never ends. One of them gives you a look that says, "You're lucky you only have to carry one jug." And he's right. The hierarchy of water fetching is its own little map of Roman society. The aqueduct-fed fountains are among the city's greatest engineering feats. The water arrives under pressure, clean enough to drink and cold enough to feel luxurious. But here's a quirky detail. Romans often believed colder water was unhealthy, too much of a shock to the system. Warm baths were adored. Cold water, used cautiously. Historians still argue whether this was superstition or an observation of how cold water seemed to worsen certain illnesses. Either way, when you drink from the fountain, you do it with a little humility and maybe one raised eyebrow. You reach your insula again, and the stairwell greets you with its usual charm, dim light, uneven steps, and the scent of cooking oil that somehow seeps in from 3 floors away. Carrying a heavy jug up these narrow stairs is a ritual of balance. One wrong move and you'll baptize the neighbor below with half your morning supply. Halfway up, you see the landlord tinkering with the wooden beams along the wall. He swears he's reinforcing them, but you suspect it's more about looking busy than preventing your apartment from suddenly becoming your downstairs neighbor's ceiling decor. He gives you a smile, too cheerful for this hour, and asks if you've heard the rumor that one of the aqueducts might need repairs. Historians still argue whether specific aqueduct failures cause short-term hygiene crises, but even the rumor can make your stomach tighten. You nod politely and keep climbing. Back inside your room, you set the jug down carefully in its little corner, your dedicated water spot. Every household has one. It's both a practical necessity and a psychological comfort. You dip your hand into the cool liquid, letting it drip across your wrist. It's tempting to wash your whole face again, but you resist. Water is rationed by habit, drilled into you by years of knowing exactly how much you'll need for breakfast, washing, cooking, and whatever surprises the day brings. You take a small sip directly from the jug. It tastes different indoors, less crisp, slightly warmer, but still safe. You swirl it in your mouth thoughtfully. The minerals carried from distant springs give it that signature Roman flavor, earthy, metallic, but honestly refreshing. Some modern visitors would panic at the thought of drinking anything that touched ancient stone channels, but you're used to it. Your stomach has trained itself like a gladiator preparing for battle. A tiny piece of grit crunches between your teeth. You spit it into your palm, muttering. That's the thing about early Rome. Cleanliness is relative. You do what you can, and you pretend not to notice the things you can't control. You grab a small cup, dip it gently and fill it halfway, enough to wet your mouth and swish, not enough to waste. You've heard rumors of wealthy households with indoor plumbing, actual pipes leading water directly inside, sometimes even with sinks. You imagine that kind of luxury, the ease of being clean without hiking up and down a staircase, and a part of you wonders if your next life should involve being born rich. But then again, knowing Roman history, rich people had their own bizarre hygiene habits, including occasionally bathing in wine or using ground marble powder as deodorant. Not always better, just different. With your jug safely filled and set aside, you consider your next move. You could wash your hands, splash your face fully, or simply wait until the bathhouse later. Romans loved their baths, but not everyone visited daily. You're somewhere in the middle. You go often, but you still savor the cool morning water touching your skin like a quiet blessing. Outside, the city is fully awake now. Shopkeepers lift wooden shutters, children run barefoot, and someone down the street is already shouting about fresh figs. You take one last look at your precious water supply, sighing with the knowledge that it won't last as long as you hope. And just like that, your day in Roman hygiene moves forward, pulled gently by the rhythm of water, dust, sunlight, and the ongoing battle to stay one step cleaner than the city around you. You step back out into the sunlight with your morning water chores complete, feeling slightly fresher but also aware that clean is a sliding scale in ancient Rome. As you move through the bustling street, your mind drifts to the part of the day that both excites you and makes you sigh in mild resignation. The moment when you'll smear yourself in oil like a marinated chicken, all in the name of hygiene. Before you get there, though, you're reminded of something crucial. Romans didn't really use soap. Not the foamy, bubbly, lavender-scented comfort modern people imagine. Soap existed in some crude forms, especially among the Gauls and Germans, but Romans considered it somewhat barbaric. Instead, you carried a little flask of olive oil infused with herbs, because oil was the magic ingredient that pulled dirt off your skin more effectively than you might expect. You head toward the thermae, the public baths, though you're not quite going inside yet. First comes the open-air warm-up ritual, oiling and scraping. The sun is higher now, casting bright stripes across the buildings, and you slide into a quieter side street to avoid the growing foot traffic. A butcher dumps a bucket of something suspicious into the gutter, and you take a wide detour because your sandals deserve mercy. The bath attendants outside the complex are already waiting, lounging under the shade of an awning, each one holding a set of tools: strigils, oil flasks, towels for the wealthy, and a selection of fragrances ranging from pleasant to, "Why does this smell like burnt fennel?" A few recognize you and raise their hands in greeting. The Romans were often creatures of habit, and regular bath-goers became known faces. You reach into your bag and pull out your own modest oil flask. The scent is simple, just olive oil with a hint of myrtle you added last week. It's not fancy, but it gets the job done. One of the attendants gestures toward a small wooden bench, inviting you to start your routine there rather than inside the bath complex. You can't help smiling at the thought. This is the Roman version of warming up before a workout. You oil your body before entering a place designed to clean it. You sit, pour a little oil into your palm and begin rubbing it onto your arms. The oil feels warm from the sun, slipping easily across your skin. At first, it's pleasant, soothing, almost luxurious. But after a few moments, as the oil mixes with dust and yesterday's sweat, you feel the familiar gritty texture forming. This is exactly what it's supposed to do. Romans believed the oil softened the skin, lifted dirt from pores, and created a layer that could be scraped off cleanly. You look down and see tiny flecks of grime rising from your skin, like the city itself is being peeled away in miniature. It's both satisfying and mildly disturbing. A full-body exfoliation that doubles as historical evidence for how many layers of Rome cling to you at any given moment. A bath attendant steps over with a grin and offers his help. He holds up a bronze strigil, curved like a miniature farming tool, its edge smooth but firm. You've seen wealthy Romans pay dearly for strigils engraved with family crests or mythological figures. Yours is simple and unadorned, a plain curve of metal designed to scrape away the one thing everyone agrees is universal: human stickiness. He begins at your shoulders, pulling the strigil downward in smooth, practiced strokes. The sensation is strange, half tickle, half scratch, like someone dragging a spatula across your skin. Little streams of oil and dirt roll off in ribbons, collecting into tiny clumps that drop onto the stone below. You glance down and wince, realizing that between the dust, sweat, and bits of cooking, smoke embedded in your skin from the previous day, you might have been an unofficial participant in the city's grime economy. A passing child pauses to watch, fascinated, as if you're shedding an entire second version of yourself. You offer a smile, but the kid's mother gives a quick tug on the child's sleeve, whispering something about not staring during other people's grooming rituals. Rome has manners, odd ones, but manners nonetheless. As the scraping continues, you feel oddly lighter, as though each pass of the strigil erases a little stress along with the grime. A fun historical tidbit floats to mind. Athletes used almost the exact same process before competitions, in part to look good and in part to keep dirt out of their pores while sweating. And here you are, getting the deluxe treatment without lifting a single weight or running a single lap. One of the attendants offers a small bowl of pumice powder, raising an eyebrow in case you want extra exfoliation. Pumice was a Roman favourite for tougher spots: heels, elbows, the occasional stubborn grime from a job involving dyes or smoke. You decline politely because you've learned your lesson. Pumice on sun-warmed skin feels like being scrubbed with the world's friendliest sandpaper, but it's still sandpaper. You do, however, accept a small dab of aromatic oil to rub onto your wrists and neck. It's infused with crushed rosemary and a hint of imported cinnamon. Expensive, but the attendant owes you a favour from last week when you helped him carry supplies during a sudden rainstorm. He pats your shoulder, leaving a warm handprint that smells faintly herbal. Nearby, a man grumbles as he oils himself with far too much enthusiasm, splashing droplets everywhere. His friend laughs, calling him a walking salad. You chuckle too, this counts as one of your daily 3 jokes, and move slightly farther from the oil enthusiast before you need a second scraping round. Once your body is coated and polished, you take the strigil into your own hands and give your legs a final self-scrape. You pull the curved bronze edge downward, watching more little ribbons of oil roll away. It's all strangely satisfying. You almost feel elegant, like a domesticated human cat shedding its outer layer. A quirky historical detail pops into your mind. Some Romans collected the leftover mixture of oil, sweat, and scrapings, called gloios, and sold it as a cure-all, especially the scrapings of athletes, which were believed to have healing properties for everything from joint pain to minor wounds. Historians still argue whether this was clever marketing or just ancient nonsense, but the idea that someone would want the stuff currently dripping near your sandals makes you shiver. You hand the strigil back and rise slowly, limbs feeling fresher and more flexible. The attendants nod approvingly. One jokes that if you keep scraping regularly, you might glow like a senator by summer. You laugh. Again, your second allotted joke, and pat your arms, feeling the new smoothness. The sun climbs a little higher. Somewhere nearby, the bathhouse furnace workers are already stoking fires to heat the caldarium, sending warm drafts of scented air into the courtyard. The promise of hot water, steam, and more scrubbing calls to you like a gentle whisper. But first, the scraping ritual is complete. You stand, clean in the Roman way, not sterile, not sparkling, but refreshed, renewed, and surprisingly smooth. And for a moment, you feel like you could take on the whole city with nothing but a strigil and your little oil flask. Until you remember, the bathhouse awaits, and cleanliness in Rome is always a multi-step adventure. You take a slow breath and move toward the entrance of the thermae, the public baths, feeling a thin sheen of oil still lingering on your skin. The scraping has taken the edge off the morning grime, but now comes the part of the Roman hygiene ritual that truly defines the rhythm of the day. The plunge into heat, steam, chatter, and the kind of communal cleanliness that feels half spa retreat, half marketplace gossip hub. The bathhouse entrance is already busy. People drift in and out, labourers squeezing in a quick rinse before heading to the docks, merchants already loudly negotiating over marble prices, and a few aristocrats pretending they're not listening to the plebs' conversations, while absolutely listening to every word. The smell that greets you is instantly recognisable. Warm stone, damp towels, scented oils, and that faint mineral tang of heated water that Roman aqueducts carry with them. You hand over a tiny coin to the ostiarius, the doorkeeper, who barely glances up as he pockets it. Business is booming. Rome might forget to clean its streets, but it never forgets to bathe. Some ancient writers even brag that you could find more bathhouses than bakeries. Historians still argue whether this was exaggeration, but stepping into the complex now, with its echoing voices and constant foot traffic, you can see why they said it. Inside the first room, the apoditerium, the changing chamber, is buzzing with energy. Rows of cubbyholes line the walls for storing clothes, guarded by attendants whose eyes are sharper than a senator's tongue during election season. You find an empty spot, strip down, and hand your bundle to a boy who looks about 10 but radiates the confidence of someone who could take down a grown man if he dared steal even a sandal strap. Romans took theft in the baths seriously. You keep your strigil and oil flask with you, though now they're backup tools. The earlier scraping session outside was just the warm-up. Inside the bathhouse, you're about to refine every inch of skin until you practically squeak. You step into the tepidarium, the warm room, and instantly the temperature shift wraps around you like a heavy embrace. The air is thick with moisture, and the warmth sinks slowly into your muscles. The floor, heated by the hypercaust system beneath it, radiates a soft glow you can feel through your soles. It's surprising how advanced Roman heating really is. Warm air circulating under the floors and through hollow walls, turning each bathing room into its own miniature climate zone. You inhale deeply. The air smells of rose oil, beeswax, and the earthy scent of limestone tiles absorbing steam. This is where people linger, stretching, gossiping, preparing their bodies for hotter spaces. Two older men argue quietly about the latest grain shipment delays, while a woman, here at an hour designated for mixed access, laughs with a friend about a neighbour's disastrous attempt at dyeing his own tunic purple. Apparently he now resembles a spoiled plum. You rub your arms, feeling the heat lift the last bits of stiffness from your muscles. Your pores open slowly, drinking in moisture. This is the part of the day when your skin forgets it ever lived in a dusty city. After a few minutes of melting pleasantly, you push onward into the caldarium, the hot room, and the shift is immediate. A wave of heat envelops you so completely that you almost lose your balance. Steam rises in thick curtains, making outlines of people blur into silhouettes. Someone nearby jokes that you could cook bread in here, and honestly, they're not far off. The great bronze basin filled with scalding water bubbles in the centre heated by the roaring furnaces below. You approach it slowly, feeling the sting of the humidity against your face. You dip your hand in, then your foot, then ease your whole body down until the heat folds around you. It's like sinking into pure fire, but the good, spa day, maybe this will fix all my problems kind. Your mind drifts. Here, surrounded by steam, your senses let go. The hot water seeps into your bones, your fingers prune slightly, and for a moment you forget that outside this serene bubble lies a city where people think dumping chamber pots from third-floor windows is an acceptable nighttime activity. Your day's stress dissolves like a tablet of incense dropped into coals. A quirky ritual unfolds across the room. A man beats his arms lightly with bundled leaves dipped in scented oil, an early form of aromatherapy and circulation stimulation. You've tried it once. It felt like being gently scolded by a shrub. Effective, though. Next to you, a friend slides into the water and sighs dramatically. If the gods wanted us to suffer, he says, they would have skipped inventing baths altogether. You smirk. There's your first joke of the section, and tell him he sounds like a philosopher who's just discovered comfort exists. He shrugs. Philosophy is easier when your pores are open, he says, which might be the truest thing anyone has ever said in a bath. You stay in the caldarium long enough to feel your thoughts slowing down. The heat draws out everything. Sweat, tension, that lingering sense of being coated in the city's dust. When your body begins to signal that it has reached maximum simmer, you stand, dripping and shimmering in the steam, and head toward the final cleansing station. This is where the second scrape happens. You place one foot on the warm tile, raise your arms, and let the attendant run the strigil along your skin again. This time the ribbons of residue are thinner, mostly oil and sweat, not the full-layer dirt buffet of earlier. The curved bronze edge glides smoothly, leaving your skin warm, slightly pink, and soft. One of the bathgoers jokes loudly. If cleanliness is next to godliness, then Rome must be the divine capital. Your friend shoots back, only until you step outside, delivering the second joke on your behalf. You nod, because he's right. Cleanliness in Rome isn't a fixed state, it's an ongoing negotiation between effort and environment. Before leaving, you enter the frigidarium, the cold plunge, which you dread every single time. You lower yourself in slowly, gasping as the cold water shocks your body awake. Romans believed this closed the pores and sealed in the benefits of the hot baths. Historians still argue whether this belief was medical insight or superstition, but after sweating enough to water a small vineyard, the cold plunge feels fair. Brutal, but fair. You come out shivering, invigorated and cleaner than you'll be at any other point today. You step back into the changing room, rubbing scented oil onto your neck and arms again. Not too much, just enough to keep the dryness away. The air outside the baths always feels cooler afterward, almost crisp. As you walk out into the sunlight, skin glowing and senses sharpened, you realize you've completed the core of Roman hygiene. But the day is far from over, and Rome has many more sensory surprises waiting. You leave the bathhouse feeling lighter, cleaner, and pleasantly warm. But as you walk through Rome's crowded streets, you can already sense reality creeping back in. The subtle return of dust, street vapors, and the unmistakable aroma of Rome being Rome. And unfortunately for you, your next hygiene stop is far less glamorous. The multi-seat public latrine. You didn't exactly plan to visit this early, but your morning water, the warm tepidarium, and the shock of the cold plunge have teamed up to nudge your stomach into making executive decisions. Besides, using the latrine before the peak crowds arrive is one of those little Roman life hacks everyone learns quickly. Privacy is a myth, but avoiding spectators is achievable if you time it right. You follow a narrow alley toward a small public facility, tucked between a bakery and a wine shop. The closer you step, the stronger the scent becomes. Sharp, earthy, not exactly foul, but definitely not perfumed. Rome's sewer system, the legendary Cloaca Maxima, carries waste away efficiently, but that doesn't mean the latrines smell like eucalyptus and ocean mist. They smell like function. Inside, sunlight filters through a high window, illuminating a long stone bench with keyhole-shaped openings carved at regular intervals. No partitions, no dividers, no courtesy curtains, just you, a row of holes, and the growing awareness that Romans view bodily functions as communal events. You mentally pat yourself on the back for arriving before the morning rush, because at this moment you count 3 other people instead of 12. You find an open slot and approach with casual confidence. Just pretend you're sitting on a public bench and nothing unusual is happening with your lower half. That's the Roman mindset. You lift your tunic and settle onto the cool stone. It is startlingly cold. You exhale sharply, then laugh under your breath. There's the first humour moment of this section. Ancient seating didn't believe in ergonomics. The man 2 spaces away nods politely and continues discussing olive prices with his neighbour. Yes, people hold full conversations in here. No shame, no hesitation. You resist the urge to make eye contact because even after all this time you still have limits. Below you, water flows steadily through the channel. A clever sanitation technique Rome rarely gets credit for. Fresh water trickles from one side, pushing waste into the main sewer. The sound is strangely calming, like a tiny river passing under your seat. A mainstream historical fact drifts through your mind. Romans even installed small fountains inside some latrines so users could wash their hands afterward. You glance around and spot a modest basin in the corner. Good. Handy. Your eyes land on a communal stick resting in a small trough near the bench. A tussorium, basically a sponge on a stick. Romans used it for wiping, rinsed it in a gutter of running water, and left it for the next person. Public hygiene at its finest, or at least its most democratic. You watch someone dip the tussorium, shake it off, and place it back in the trough. You swallow. You remind yourself you took a very thorough bath earlier. Still, this practice inspires your second joke for the section. Sharing is caring, you mutter internally, unless it's a sponge that's already cared for too many people. A man across from you brings up a quirky piece of news. Apparently, a senator recently proposed creating a tax to maintain high-status latrines separately from regular ones. Historians still argue whether this was a serious proposal or just satire recorded by gossipy writers who enjoyed mocking the upper class. Either way, you can already imagine wealthy elites insisting on marble seats, perfumed sponges, and maybe even dedicated attendants who fan them while they contemplate civic policy. You finish your business quickly, not because you're rushed, but because you're a civilized person who hasn't fully adapted to Rome's open-concept bathroom lifestyle. You rise, adjust your clothing, and stroll to the fountain. The water flows in a gentle stream. You rinse your hands thoroughly, rubbing fingers and palms with practiced efficiency. No soap, of course, but Romans believed running water and the friction of rubbing were good enough. Given what you've just experienced, you decide to rub a little longer. Another bathgoer from earlier recognizes you and waves as he enters, saying cheerfully, "The baths cleanse the body, but the latrines humble the soul." You laugh, your third joke, and reply, "At least the stone is cooler than the caldarium floor." You step out into fresh air, taking in the scent of warm bread drifting from the bakery next door. It hits you like a blessing after the aromatic challenges inside. The sun has risen higher now, casting sharper shadows across the street. You stretch your arms, feeling your skin still warm and smooth from the baths, but now grounded again in the realities of daily Roman life. As you walk, you reflect on how strange and strangely efficient Roman sanitation really is. Communal, open, practical, and absolutely unapologetic. There is a certain peace in the honesty of it. No pretense, no embarrassment, just bodies being bodies in the most straightforward way possible. You choose a side street that leads to the Forum district, stepping around a puddle of who knows what, while reminding yourself that Tokyo levels of cleanliness are centuries away. Rome is a living organism. Beautiful, chaotic, aromatic, and always ready to surprise you. But as the air shifts and the city noise swells around you, you realize that surviving Roman hygiene isn't about staying clean, it's about staying adaptable, and the day has much more for you to adapt to. You step back into the street, feeling far cleaner in spirit than the city around you. You've survived the public latrine, an accomplishment that deserves a small medal, or at least a respectful nod from the gods. But Rome wastes no time reminding you that hygiene is a moving target here, one you're constantly negotiating with every breath, every step, every dodge of something falling or leaking from above. You start down a busy street toward the Forum district, weaving between carts and pedestrians with the kind of nimble footwork that should honestly count as daily cardio. Ahead, a pair of oxen pull a wagon loaded with clay jars. The animals plod steadily along, leaving behind fresh gifts that no one immediately cleans up. The scent wafts gently into your personal space like an unwanted handshake. A good reminder that in Rome, hygiene is not just an activity, it's a battlefield. A woman sweeping outside her shop sees you sidestep the mess and gives an apologetic shrug. "The streets fight back," she says with a grin. You laugh lightly, there's your first joke for the section, and agree that staying clean in this city sometimes feels like a competitive sport. You walk past a butcher's stall where remnants of yesterday's scraps attract a small cloud of flies. The butcher waves them away half-heartedly while chatting with a customer about the price of goat meat. Romans weren't oblivious to pests, but they had fewer tools to manage them. Cleanliness was often measured by effort, not outcome. You step wide to avoid a thin stream of something trickling from the stall's edge, a liquid of indeterminate origin but clear intention, to find the lowest point in the street. The gutter channels lining the roadway do their best to carry away runoff, but best is a relative term. Sometimes they help. More often they create narrow rivers of questionable composition that require careful foot placement. You follow the dry sections of the stones, hopping between patches like a child playing an adult version of the floor is lava. Except here the floor is potentially worse than lava. A mainstream historical fact comes to mind. Roman streets were intentionally built with raised stepping stones at intersections precisely so pedestrians could cross without stepping into runoff. You make use of one now, landing neatly on the stone as a cart chases a fresh wave of filth down the gutter like a grim parade float. Further along, you pass a tannery, one of the most aromatic landmarks in any neighbourhood. The smell hits you before you even turn the corner. Sharp, acidic, unmistakably skin meets chemistry. Workers inside are busy scraping hides, soaking them in vats of urine, and pounding them into submission. That's the quirky tidbit for this section. Roman leatherworkers used human urine as a key ingredient because of its ammonia content. It softens hides beautifully, and it smells exactly like you think it would. A man hauling a bundle of treated leather emerges just as you pass, nodding politely. You nod back while holding your breath. Even clean Romans could carry a trace of the city's industries on their skin, and workers in tanneries carried more than a trace. You move briskly toward the forum area, hoping the open plaza will smell fresher. On the way, a shopkeeper leans out to empty a basin into the street. She gives a quick glance to make sure no one is directly below, a courtesy not universally practiced, and dumps the wastewater into the gutter. You jump back, narrowly missing the splash. "Careful," she calls. "You missed me by a miracle," you reply. "Then the gods are awake today." You both laugh, the second joke, because in Rome, avoiding unexpected showers really does feel like divine intervention. You slip into the shade of a portico to take a breath. The air is cooler here, and a slight breeze cuts through the heat. You spot a few men repairing a mosaic in front of a wealthy household. Their hands and arms are covered in stone dust, and one of them wipes his face absent-mindedly, leaving a faint grey stripe across his cheek. Hygiene is always a challenge when your job involves pigment, glue, mortar, or dyes. Many Romans finished their workdays looking like abstract art pieces. Speaking of dyes, you soon pass a Phalonica, a laundromat where workers stomp on fabrics in vats of water, clay, and, yes, more urine. The smell is unmistakable, but the results are impressive. Romans loved crisp white tunics, and the fullers knew exactly how to restore them. Some of the workers whistle as they stomp, legs pumping like they're dancing in a festival, while standing knee-deep in cloth-infused mystery broth. You admire their dedication, even as you keep walking. A fringe debate floats through your mind, something historians still wrestle with, whether these laundries were more common in crowded areas or pushed to the outskirts to manage the smell. Evidence points both ways depending on the city. You look around at the bustling street, the shopkeepers, the vegetable stalls, and decide today's placement is certainly in the middle of everything. You spot a man walking ahead of you with a small jar of perfume dangling from his belt. Perfumes were a form of self-defense in Rome, especially in dense urban districts. You consider investing in a stronger blend next time you visit the market. Maybe something with cinnamon bark or rose petals to fight the tannery and chamber pot combo that seems to follow you everywhere. You finally reach the Forum Square. It's busier but somehow fresher than the alleyways. The open air allows the heat and smells to disperse, replaced by the scent of baked bread, incense from a nearby shrine, and the faint mineral tang of the public fountains. You breathe deeply, grateful for even a modest reprieve. A friend spots you and waves you over. He gestures to your tunic with a smirk. Already picking up the city, I see. You glance down and realize a fine layer of dust has settled on your shoulders. You try staying clean out there, you reply. He laughs, your third joke for the section, and says, "That's why I never leave home before noon." You roll your eyes but smile. Rome is a living system, dusty, unpredictable, and always carrying new opportunities to get dirty. But that's part of its charm. No one expects perfection. They expect participation. You wipe a bit of dust from your arm and continue through the square, knowing the day has much more to show you about what it truly means to stay clean in a city that never stops moving. By the time you reach the edge of the Forum district, the sun is high enough to warm the top of your head and remind you that Rome's real cleaning magic doesn't happen on your skin, it happens to your clothes. Or at least it's supposed to. Because in a world without laundry detergent, washing machines, or stain removers, the Romans turned clothing maintenance into a full-blown industrial process that is equal parts ingenious, unpleasant, and surprisingly effective. You take a right turn down a side street where the air grows noticeably sharper, tinged with a scent that makes your eyebrows lift on instinct. It's not foul, exactly, just strong, pungent, assertive. The unmistakable aroma of a Phalonica, Rome's laundry workshop where stains are defeated, fabrics are revived, and your tunic comes back cleaner than you'd expect for something that took a bath in ingredients better suited for a chemist than a tailor. A large doorway opens onto the Phalonica floor, and immediately you're hit with the sight of workers standing knee-deep in stone basins, rhythmically stomping on bundles of clothing. It looks like they're squishing grapes, except instead of making wine, they're making your clothes wearable again. One man waves as he stomps, raising his legs with exaggerated flair, like he's trying to impress the gods of cleanliness. You step inside, careful to avoid puddles on the floor. They glisten in a suspicious way that warns you, do not slip here if you value your dignity. The foreman recognizes you, and gives a cheerful nod. Tunic's looking dusty again, he says. The city gives you gifts whether you ask for them or not. You laugh. There's your first joke of the section, and admit he's not wrong. He gestures to a worker who brings a wooden paddle and holds up one of your recently dropped-off tunics. It's cleaner now, noticeably brighter, and it smells faintly of, well, not roses, but something that signals processed with intensity. That's because fullers, Rome's laundry experts, used a mixture of water, clay, salt, sulfur, and human urine to break down dirt and oils in clothing. That's the quirky tidbit for the section. Urine was collected in public jars placed around the city so the laundry industry could scoop it up for free. Talk about recycling. One man stomping in a basin glances over and grins. It's the ammonia, he says proudly, does wonders. You nod politely because he is absolutely right, and also because he is currently marinating your wardrobe with his feet. Several workers shift from basin to basin, their steps choreographed like a strange ballet. Fabric sloshes, water splashes, and the air carries a scent that is equal parts cleanliness and chemistry. You're always impressed by how efficient the process is. After soaking and stomping, the fabric is rinsed thoroughly, beaten with wooden paddles to soften it, then hung on lines across the courtyard to dry under the warm Roman sun. You follow the foreman deeper into the workshop where a group of workers handle the next stage. Brushing garments with fuller's earth, a clay that absorbs leftover oils and gives the cloth a brighter appearance. It leaves a fine powder drifting in the air like pale snow. The foreman waves his hand dramatically, saying, "Careful not to inhale too much. We want your tunic clean, not your lungs." You smile again, joke number 2, and step out of the powder's path. A historian's debate floats into your mind. Some scholars argue that fullers were among the first to use chemical bleaching agents, while others believe most whitening came from sunlight and elbow grease. The fullers themselves don't care. They know their methods work, even if modern scientists might raise an eyebrow. One worker carries a small pot of sulfur fumes toward a drying rack. "Brightens the cloth," he says, proudly lifting a damp tunic that suddenly looks a shade whiter than just a moment ago. You cough politely as the fumes reach your nose. Maybe too effective. On the far end of the courtyard, workers finish the process by brushing, stretching, and smoothing the garments. Clothes in Rome weren't one and done. They needed shaping after every wash, moulded back into form like clay. It's why tunics often looked crisp when worn, even though they might have just survived the laundry equivalent of a gladiator match. Your friend Cassius appears suddenly, waving a half-clean tunic at you. They added extra clay to mine, he says. Apparently I live a vigorous lifestyle. You grin, third joke, because vigorous is a generous way to describe falling asleep in a tavern doorway last night. He nudges you and points to a basin overflowing with sudsy-looking liquid. That one's for fancy clients, he says. More urine, less water. You blink. That's a choice. The finest choice, he replies proudly, like someone boasting about owning silk. You accept your freshly cleaned tunic from the foreman, feeling its crisp texture and faint mineral scent. You've learned not to smell your clothes too closely after they leave the Fullernicker. The important thing is that the grime is gone, the fabric is bright, and you can step back into the city looking like you haven't spent your entire morning dodging questionable street puddles. Before leaving, you slip a few coins to the foreman, who bows slightly and reminds you to come back next week, or sooner if the dust demons attack again. You return to the street, tunic over your shoulder, feeling grateful for Rome's strangely effective, wildly aromatic laundry industry. Clean clothes are half the battle in this city, the other half, keeping them that way long enough to make it home. And Rome is already preparing its next challenge. You sling your freshly cleaned tunic over your shoulder and start down the street again, enjoying the brief window of time when your clothing is crisp, your skin is smooth, and your personal scent is still more rosemary oil than Roman Street. Of course, you know this won't last. Rome has a way of testing everyone's hygiene, and the next test, whether you like it or not, is hair. Not just your hair, everyone's hair. Because in ancient Rome, hair wasn't merely a fashion statement. It was a survival strategy, a public announcement of status, a portable hygiene challenge, and occasionally a fire hazard. You head toward a small courtyard where a barber stall and a wigmaker's workshop share a shaded awning. Immediately the smells hit you: hot iron, singed hair, wax, oil, and a faint whiff of smoke that makes you pray no one's styling tool overheats today. Several people are already gathered. Women recline on low stools while attendants braid, comb, twist, and fasten elaborate hairstyles using pins, bone tools, and sometimes enough hairpieces to outfit a small legion of mannequins. Men sit upright on benches, waiting for barbers to trim their beards and tidy their curls. A barber waves when he spots you. "You're looking too neat," he calls. "Let's fix that." You laugh gently, your first joke, because in Rome, fixing often means adding 3 extra steps, 2 oils, 1 heated iron, and a moral lesson from someone old enough to remember Augustus. You settle onto a bench while he inspects your hair with the seriousness of a man diagnosing a structural flaw in a bridge. "Dry," he declares. "Dusty. You need oil, heat, and a bit of curling." "Curling?" you repeat. He nods firmly. Everyone looks better with subtle curls. Even statues agree. Before you can argue, he dabs olive oil onto your scalp, working it in with his fingertips. The oil is warm, pleasantly so, but it carries that unmistakable Roman scent of herbs and distant smoke. He combs through the strands with a bone comb, tugging just hard enough to make your eyes water. For someone who treats hair with reverence, he certainly doesn't handle it gently. You feel a small crowd gather behind you. Rome has many pastimes: gossip, politics, gambling. But watching someone get their hair styled is shockingly high on the list. Barbers talk, clients talk, bystanders talk. Half the city's rumours probably originate from this exact bench. Your barber holds up a tiny bronze curling tool, its end heated gently over a small brazier. "Hold still," he says, "or you'll smell like burned wool." "Comforting," you reply dryly, joke number 2. He starts curling small sections, just enough to create texture without turning you into a potted shrub. The heat is noticeable but tolerable, until the tool gets a little too close to your ear. You flinch. He steadies your head. "Only a slight singe," he says. "Adds character." You raise an eyebrow. In the corner, a wig maker tends to shelves full of hairpieces, braided, coiled, curled, and some dyed in colours you didn't know existed in nature. This is where Roman hair care becomes less about hygiene and more about artistry mixed with mild deception. Wealthy women especially favoured wigs made from imported German or Indian hair, believing foreign hair was thicker, glossier, and better suited for elaborate updos. Some wigs are towering creations that look structurally questionable, like extravagantly coiffed pastries. You watch as a woman tries on a towering wig made of blonde curls. The moment it's placed on her head, her entire posture changes. Chin higher, shoulders back, an expression that says, "Yes, I now carry half a sheep's worth of hair on my skull, and yes, I deserve admiration for it." The wig maker beams proudly. The quirky tidbit for this section falls into place. Some Roman women used soot, ash, and fermented leeches to dye their hair darker. Leeches. Fermented. You shiver internally. Cleanliness sometimes hurts, but beauty is merciless. Meanwhile, your barber begins trimming stray strands with a razor-sharp knife. The blade glints dangerously in the sunlight, and you remain perfectly still, not out of trust, but out of self-preservation. He tells you a story about a man who tried trimming his own beard and ended up cutting a hole in his best tunic. You laugh, because that is exactly the kind of chaos this city specializes in. Then he leans in and whispers one of those lines you know will stick with you all day. Historians still argue whether Romans invented the first heated curling iron or the first accidental bathroom fire because of one. You almost snort, but you hold it together. Once the trimming is done, he rubs a scented pomade into your hair, a mixture of beeswax, myrrh, and herbs. It smells surprisingly good, balancing earthy and sweet. You run your fingers along your temple and realize it does feel neater, smoother, and undeniably intentional. Maintaining hair in Rome isn't about keeping it perfectly clean. It's about keeping it manageable in a city full of dust, heat, and smoke. As you stand, the barber tilts your chin slightly, inspecting his handiwork. He nods approvingly. "You look respectable again," he says. 10 minutes on the streets and you'll look like everyone else, but for now, enjoy it." You roll your eyes softly, third joke of the section, and thank him with a few coins. The sound of the street feels different the moment you step away from the awning. You're lighter, tidier, and maybe a touch prettier than you were an hour ago. You pass a small mirror hung on the shop wall and glance at your reflection. Your hair gleams faintly in the sunlight, neatly shaped, behaving for now. A group of children runs past, kicking dust into the air. Some of it lands on your shoulder. You sigh. Rome wins again. Still, your hair looks good, and that counts for something. You walk away from the wigmaker's awning with your hair freshly curled, shaped, and lightly shining in the sunlight, but Rome doesn't let you enjoy that triumph for long. A gust of wind sweeps down the street, carrying dust like tiny airborne gremlins determined to undo your barber's hard work. You tuck your chin instinctively, muttering a quiet prayer to any god who might specialize in hair preservation. But there's another grooming ritual you still need to face today. The Roman barbershop experience. The real one. The one that involves blades sharp enough to slice parchment, gossip sharp enough to slice reputations, and sanitation standards that, well, let's just say they're enthusiastic but not exactly modern. You head toward a small alley off the main road, where the local tonsor, the neighborhood barber, operates from a shaded stall. The shop is busier than usual. A few men sit on stools, some getting shaved, others waiting their turn, and all of them chatting at volumes that make it impossible not to overhear everything. The barber, Marcellus, spots you and gives a big wave. Finally, the cleanest face in the city needs attention. "That's debatable," you reply, your first joke of the section, as you step inside. The shop smells of oil, metal, charcoal, and faint citrus from the crushed rinds Marcellus keeps in a bowl to rub on his hands. A nice touch, though it doesn't always overpower the other odours competing for dominance. You sit on a wooden stool polished smooth by years of anxious clients shifting around while blades hovered near their throats. Marcellus circles you with the theatrical flair of a man who believes he could have been a performer if fate hadn't given him an eye for stubble. "Face or beard?" he asks. "Just a clean shave." He nods, already reaching for a razor that looks terrifyingly sharp and only moderately clean. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Roman barbers used steel razors honed carefully on whetstones, and the wealthy often owned personal grooming kits with razors, tweezers, and nail cleaners. But most people, like you, relied on the public barber. Along with whatever mysteries came along with shared tools, Marcellus dips the blade into a bowl of warm water that's been sitting out since the morning rush. It's not exactly sterile, but it's warm and slightly oily, smelling faintly of rosemary. He wipes it on a cloth, then on his apron, then on your cheek in a friendly pat that does nothing to calm your nerves. "Hold still," he says, leaning in. I sharpened this blade yesterday. Should glide like a fish." You freeze. The blade touches your skin, and to your relief, he's right. It does glide. Smoothly, even satisfyingly, scraping away the faint roughness from your jawline. The scraping sound is soft but unmistakable, like a quill dragging gently across parchment. As he works, the men around you talk freely. A merchant complains about a rival shopkeeper watering down his wine. A young man boasts that he convinced his girlfriend he's related to a minor official in the Senate. An older man corrects everyone's Latin grammar every 5 minutes. You're not sure which is more dangerous, the razor or the conversation. Someone mentions a rumor that the emperor is planning a new public works project. Someone else swears he saw a senator wearing sandals with mismatched straps. The older man insists this is a sign of moral decline. You resist the urge to laugh too loudly. One wrong move, and Marcellus might sculpt you a new smile. As he finishes your left cheek, Marcellus pulls back to inspect his work. "Beautiful," he declares, "like a marble statue, but less cold." You roll your eyes gently, joke number 2, though you're still afraid to move too much. Next comes the second pass. Romans were particular about smoothness. Some even plucked stray hairs with tweezers, especially around the eyebrows. You've seen men walk out of here looking like their foreheads were carved by Apollo himself, sometimes a little too carved. Marcellus trims the edges of your sideburns, wipes your cheeks with a cloth, and pats your face with oil that smells pleasantly of lemon. The oil is thin, refreshing, and slightly tingly. Romans loved fragrant oils. It doubled as perfume and helped calm skin after shaving with blades that were, let's be honest, used on 10 other people today. A quirky tidbit pops into memory. Some Roman men believed shaving made them look youthful and energetic, while others believed a well-groomed beard showed wisdom. The debate never fully died out, and historians still argue whether fashion or politics drove these grooming trends more strongly. As Marcellus prepares to trim the back of your neck, the older man in the corner makes a grand proclamation about how real Roman men never fear the razor. You, meanwhile, hold perfectly still as Marcellus clears the hairline with confident flicks. Once he finishes, he wipes your neck with a warm cloth and steps back. "You look respectable again," he says proudly, "another hour or 2 before the dust claims you." "Generous estimate," you reply, third joke. He laughs so loudly that 2 customers glance over. You stand, stretching your shoulders, and admire your reflection in the shop's polished bronze mirror. Your face is smooth, your hair still neatly arranged from earlier, and your skin carries that faint herbal glow from barber oils. Outside, sunlight filters through the awning, making the dust in the air look almost magical. You hand Marcellus a few coins. He pockets them with a grateful nod and says, "Come back tomorrow. New gossip, even sharper blades." You step back into the street, feeling fresher than you have all day. Between the bathhouse, the oils, the scraping, and the barber's attentive, if slightly terrifying touch, you're currently the closest version of clean that Rome allows, but you know what's coming next. Scent, masking, perfume, the ancient art of smelling better than your surroundings, and Rome has many scents to compete with. Freshly shaved and feeling like a polished statue, minus the marble complexion and eternal dignity, you step back into the bright Roman sunlight. The air hits your face with a warm breeze that carries the familiar blend of dust, baking bread, wet stone, and... is that donkey? Yes. Yes, it is. Rome's streets are nothing if not aromatic, which brings you to your next daily hygiene necessity, smelling better than the city you live in. Perfume, powders, scented oils. These are not luxuries here. They are survival tools, weapons even. In a world where working near a tannery can permanently alter your soul, where laundry involves urine, and where the public latrine experience lingers in memory longer than anyone wants, wearing fragrance is the Roman equivalent of carrying an emotional support talisman. You make your way toward the perfumery district, a cluster of tiny shops where bottles of oils, powders, and balms shimmer behind windows like tiny artisanal treasures. The smell grows sweeter as you walk. Honey, myrrh, cinnamon, rose petals, and resins imported from lands so distant they might as well be myths. A shopkeeper spots you approaching and beams. "Ah, you look shaved, scraped, and civilized. Time to smell civilized as well." "That's the plan," you say, your first joke of the section, as he ushers you inside. The interior is a sensory paradise. Shelves overflow with small clay pots, glass vials, and carved wooden boxes holding perfumes in nearly every form imaginable. A pot of powdered iris root sits open, releasing a soft floral scent. Another jar holds something more pungent, a mixture that smells like ancient incense and spicy ambition. Perfume in Rome isn't just for the wealthy, though the best scents do cost a small fortune. Even average citizens buy small amounts, enough to dab onto their wrists or necks and pretend, for a moment, that they aren't surrounded by 12 different kinds of street smells at any given time. The shopkeeper plucks a small bottle from the shelf and flips the lid with a flourish. "Try this one," he says, offering you the opening. "Cinnamon, myrrh, and a touch of frankincense." You lean in and inhale. The scent is warm, sweet, and almost velvety. It reminds you of festival days and temple offerings. You dab a little onto your wrist, pleased with its richness. Next, he shows you a tiny pot filled with white lead powder mixed with ground chalk, used by many wealthy women, and some men, to lighten the face. You immediately take a step back. You've heard enough scary stories about that stuff to know better. "I'll pass on slowly poisoning myself," you say. He shrugs. "Suit yourself. Beauty is worth casualties." You decide not to investigate that sentence further. Then he offers you something else, a solid perfume tablet made of beeswax and herbs. "Rub this along the collar," he suggests. "Keeps your tunic smelling like a garden for at least half an hour." You try it cautiously. The scent is surprisingly refreshing, mint and lavender, and gives your clean tunic a little burst of brightness. Half an hour is optimistic, but optimism is practically a requirement for living in Rome. As you browse, you notice a tray of exotic ingredients labelled with impressive titles: essence of Arabia, resin of India, oil of Nile lotus. They're likely diluted versions of the real thing, but even diluted scents make people feel wealthier, cleaner, and more confident. A quirky historical tidbit bubbles up. Romans sometimes used saffron-infused oils for special occasions, not for the smell alone, but because saffron tinted the skin with a golden sheen under sunlight. It's ancient highlighter. You consider buying a tiny pot, but the price tag makes you wince. You're not trying to attract half the Senate, just trying not to smell like your morning route to the Fullonica. A wealthy woman enters the shop behind you. Her gown swishes dramatically as she inspects the shelves with a nose so discerning it should have its own legal rights. The shopkeeper practically glows under her scrutiny. She picks up a small bottle of something that smells like powdered roses mixed with cedar, sniffs, frowns, and sets it back down with the gravitas of a general rejecting a battle plan. You pretend not to stare, but you fail. She notices you failing and gives a tiny nod of acknowledgement, the universal Roman gesture of "yes, I know you're watching. No, I don't blame you." Meanwhile, two young men near the back debate loudly over which scent lasts longer in the heat. One insists on a thick resinous oil. The other argues for powdered myrrh. You overhear one say, "Historians still argue whether Vitruvius was right about resin preserving body heat," which makes you quietly laugh. When Romans cite historians casually in perfume shops, you know you're living in an overly educated city. The shopkeeper finally gathers a few items for you: a small pot of scented wax, a tiny vial of cinnamon myrrh oil, and a sachet of crushed herbs wrapped in linen to tuck inside your clothing. "For the full effect," he says, "wear these together. You will smell like someone who absolutely does not work near a tannery." You raise an eyebrow. "I don't work near a tannery." "But you will smell convincingly like it," he says, tapping your shoulder. Your second joke of the section. You pay him and tuck your fragrant prizes into your pouch, feeling more prepared to face the city's sensory battlefield. As you walk outside, the warm air catches the new scents rising from your skin and tunic. You smell sharp cinnamon, fresh herbs, a whisper of lavender, and the tiniest hint of citrus from your barber's pomade. For a brief moment, just a moment, you feel like the cleanest, most fragrant person within 50 steps. Then a cart full of fish rumbles by. You inhale through your mouth. This is Rome. You're not surprised. A group of children sprint past, kicking up dust. One bumps into you and apologizes before continuing the chase. You glance down at your sandal, now lightly decorated with powdered street dirt. The universe wastes no time balancing your small victory. Still, the scents cling to you. Stronger now. You smell civilized, refined, resilient. And you'll need that resilience, because the next challenge involves food, kitchens, smoke, and the complicated art of eating clean in a city that cooks like a dream but sanitizes like a nightmare. You inhale one last time, through your mouth, because the fish cart is still lingering emotionally, and continue down the winding Roman street toward your next brush with daily hygiene, the kitchen, or more accurately, the Roman idea of a kitchen, which is equal parts fire hazard, smoke generator, flavour factory, and hygiene puzzle designed to test your sanity. Most Romans don't have full kitchens at home. Apartments in insulae are too cramped and too flammable to safely host open flames, so street vendors, taverns, and communal cooking stalls fill the gap. Even wealthier homes with proper culinary often feel less like modern kitchens and more like small cave-like rooms dedicated to producing wonderful food in conditions that would make today's health inspectors faint dramatically. Your stomach growls. A bath, a shave, a perfuming session. These things build an appetite. You follow the smell of roasting chickpeas and warm bread toward a Pepina, a small tavern that serves hot food. The air around it has that savoury, smoky aroma of clay pots simmering over coal-fired stoves. As you step inside, the warmth hits you immediately. The room is dim, the walls a little smudged with soot, the ceiling beams darkened by years of smoke. Two men sit at a low table, eating stew while arguing loudly about whether gladiators eat better than senators. You're fairly sure gladiators eat more protein, but senators definitely eat more quietly. The tavern owner, Livia, recognizes you. Hungry? She asks. Ravenous, you reply. Preferably something that won't kill me. That's the goal, she says with a grin, your first joke of the section. Livia ladles out a warm dish of lentils cooked with herbs, barley, and a splash of garum, Rome's beloved fermented fish sauce. You can smell the tangy, salty punch of it immediately. It's both delicious and bold. You trust Livia's kitchen, though. Her cooking area may look like something between a blacksmith forge and a treasure chest of clay pots, but she keeps things remarkably organised. Still, as you watch her stir the pot, you notice her ladle resting briefly on the edge of the stove, dangerously close to charcoal ash. She does this every day. She also wipes her hands on her apron every few minutes. The apron, however, hasn't been washed since the last full moon, or at least it looks that way. This is where Roman culinary hygiene dances its delicate dance. Good ingredients, seasoned cooks, and passionate preparation, surrounded by soot, smoke, and surfaces that would absolutely fail a modern kitchen audit. You take your bowl to a corner seat. The wooden table has the kind of shine that only comes from years of elbows, plates, spilled wine, and more elbows. You give it a quick wipe with your sleeve, instinct more than hope, and begin eating. The lentils taste rich, warm, earthy, comforting. Romans knew how to layer flavours even when most spices were imported luxuries. You savour a bite while mentally weighing the odds that some amount of charcoal dust made it into the pot. Honestly, probably. But so did rosemary, garlic, and barley. And your stomach has survived worse. You once accidentally ate a fig that a street vendor dropped, dusted off, and handed back good as new. Across the room, a cook prepares flatbread on a hot stone slab. The slab is scraped clean between each batch, not with water, but with a wooden spatula and a handful of flour. It's a system, and it works, though you can still see faint grime on the edges of the cooking surface. Romans had cleanliness strategies. They were just different ones. Another mainstream fact floats to mind. Roman kitchens lacked chimneys in many homes, so smoke built up inside, coating walls and ceiling beams. You glance at Livia's ceiling. Yep, dark, smoky, textured like a volcanic cave. Quirky tidbit time. Some wealthy homes cooked in separate outdoor kitchens to avoid filling the main house with smoke, smells, and fire risks. You're not wealthy. So you get the authentic smoky ambience. As you eat, a man nearby starts a friendly argument with his companion about whether garum improves every dish or only 90% of dishes. His companion insists garum can heal the soul. The man counters that it has, on occasion, attempted to kill his stomach. You suppress a laugh, nearly inhaling a lentil. Another customer walks in carrying a small clay pot of ingredients. Many Romans bring their own raw food to taverns to be cooked on site for a small fee. Livia examines his ingredients, a cut of goat, onions, herbs, and nods approvingly before tossing everything into a pan that hisses loudly over the fire. He sits beside you and stretches his shoulders. "Long morning?" he asks. "You have no idea," you reply. He sniffs the air near you. You smell like cinnamon and bathhouse steam. "So, decent?" Better than me, he says. There's your second joke of the section. As you finish your meal, Livia brings you a small cup of warm, slightly smoky wine. Not your request, but it's a tavern tradition. You sip it. It tastes like grapes, sunlight, and the faintest whisper of wood ash. Roman kitchen terroir. Before leaving, you peek behind the curtain separating the dining area from the tiny prep room. It's chaotic, mortars full of herb paste, knives dulled from constant use, pots stacked precariously, fish hanging to dry, and a stray cat lounging on a crate like it owns the place. Maybe it does. A fringe scholarly debate comes to mind. Historians still argue whether Roman kitchens were truly unsanitary or simply misunderstood by modern standards, since the constant heat and salt-heavy diet may have reduced bacterial risks more than we assume. You step back outside into the sunlight, stomach full, face flushed from the warmth of the tavern. The scents of cooking cling to your clothes in the pleasant yet smoky way Rome does so well. A breeze ruffles your tunic, and you catch the herbal note of the perfume you bought earlier. It softens the kitchen aroma just enough to feel civilized. You rub your hands together, noting the faint oily residue left from your meal. You'll want to rinse them at the next fountain, but water isn't always the pure blessing it seems in Rome. And now you're heading straight toward the challenge of storing, carrying, and trusting that precious resource. You step back out into the busy sunlight, hands still slightly oily from lunch, and your first instinct is to make your way toward the nearest fountain. Your stomach feels pleasantly warm, your clothes smell like a polite argument between herbs and smoke, and you're ready to rinse off before the afternoon heat turns the entire city into one giant simmering pot. But as you approach the fountain, you're reminded, yet again, that Roman water is both a marvel and a gamble. A few children splash their hands joyfully in the stream flowing from the carved stone spout. Behind them, a woman fills a jar with practiced efficiency, keeping her elbow close to her body to avoid bumping into anyone. You take your place at the edge of the crowd and let the cool water run over your palms. It feels refreshing. Mostly. There's always that faint worry about what's floating invisibly within it. Here's your mainstream historical fact, one every Roman learned early. Aqueduct water was exceptionally well engineered, fresh, constant, and cleverly distributed. Rome's aqueducts brought water from miles away, dropping with just the right gentle slope to maintain pressure without bursting pipes. It's brilliant, genius, a masterpiece of engineering. But then it gets here, and once it arrives, flowing into fountains, basins, public baths, cisterns, and private households, the real hygiene question begins. How do you keep it clean after it's already perfect? You cup some into your hand and taste a tiny drop. It's cool, slightly mineral, and honestly refreshing. But you've also heard the stories. Some households store water in large clay jars for days, unaware that the lining slowly leaches metallic tastes, or that dust drifts into the neck when no one is looking. Your own jug at home probably contains a handful of bonus particles by now. A man next to you offers a wry smile. Careful, he says. You've got that look. Is this water clean or is this going to upset my stomach? Look. You exhale a small laugh, your first joke of the section, and reply, I like to live dangerously. He nods knowingly and wanders off with his jug. You finish rinsing your hands and step aside as an older woman pushes forward with a bucket, muttering about how the morning rush always leaves the fountain water tasting like other people's impatience. She turns to you and asks, storing it or drinking it fresh? Both, you answer. Ah, she says with a sigh, then may Fortuna guide your bowels. You try not to laugh too visibly as you leave. You carry a small clay cup with you, one of those portable necessities most Romans keep tucked into their belt or pouch. You fill it gently from the fountain's continuous flow and take another sip. Fresh water in Rome is always worth savouring. But storing it? That's where the trouble begins. You make your way toward a friend's home in a quieter district. Along the route, you pass an open courtyard where servants pour water from large amphorae into even larger storage jars. The jars are sealed with cloth and wax, but you can see dust already gathering on the lids, settling lightly like a reminder that nothing stays pristine for long in this city. A servant scrubs the inside of an empty jar with sand and water. Keeps the taste clean, he explains. But the jar isn't entirely spotless. There are faint stains along the bottom from previous batches of water. When he pours in new water, the fresh liquid takes on a slight cloudiness that he pretends not to notice. You appreciate his optimism. You recall a quirky tidbit. Wealthier Romans sometimes added herbs, wine, or vinegar to water to improve the flavor and kill off questionable elements. It wasn't perfect, but it helped. Poorer families sometimes did the same. Vinegar especially was the great equalizer of Roman hydration. As you continue your walk, you pass a long stone channel built along the road. Water flows through it slowly, destined for a nearby pool. A few men stand around, discussing whether the aqueduct supplying this area will undergo maintenance soon. One insists that a crack has formed in a distant section. Another claims he saw workers inspecting it last week. You overhear one man say, "Historians still argue whether the Aqua Marcia lasted longer because of its superior construction, or because Mars himself blessed it." You chuckle softly. Romans love debating whose aqueduct is better the same way modern people argue over phone brands. Eventually you reach your friend Flaccus's home. He's an expert on storing water, the kind of man who could give a lecture about clay jar curing temperatures while handing you a cup of wine. You duck inside his cool atrium, where the floor mosaics shine under the filtered light. Flaccus greets you warmly. "Come to borrow water knowledge," he says knowingly. "Come to borrow a pulse that can survive it," you reply, second joke. He leads you to his storage area. 3 massive clay jars sit in the corner, each one stopped with waxed cloth, each one marked with charcoal symbols indicating filling date, aqueduct source, and, this is the impressive part, clarity rating. This man logs his water like a sommelier. He pulls off one cover and dips a ladle inside. The water looks clearer than most, though still a little cloudy near the bottom. "Sediment settles," he explains. "Don't drink that part." He pours a cup for you from the top layer. It tastes surprisingly good. Cooler than the fountain, almost crisp. "Because," Flaccus says proudly, "I store jars in the shade and wrap them with wet cloth. It reduces temperature." "So you've invented the Roman refrigerator, you say?" "I prefer the term advanced cooling technology." You roll your eyes, third joke, but truly he's onto something. Shade and airflow keep water fresher. Some Romans even buried jars partially underground for extra cooling. Genius meets necessity. Before you leave, you help him lift a heavy amphora, both of you shifting your weight carefully. Water storage in Rome isn't just chore work, it's a daily negotiation between engineering, environment, and a little bit of luck. Sometimes the water tastes perfect, sometimes it tastes like a roof tile. You step back into the street, feeling grateful for the drink but more aware than ever that your next sips, whether from fountains or storage jars, will always carry the signature mystery of ancient Rome. Still, water keeps you going, even if it brings along the occasional flavor surprise. And now, as the afternoon heat grows, your thoughts drift toward the other side of a Roman hygiene. Medicine, herbs, and remedies both brilliant and bizarre. You leave Flaccus's home with a fresher sip of water in your stomach and a deeper appreciation for his advanced cooling technology. The sun now hangs heavy over the city, warming the stone streets until they feel almost alive beneath your sandals. Afternoon in Rome means heat, dust, and the kind of air that makes you crave shade whenever you can find it. It also happens to be the time when people begin drifting toward the healers, herbalists, and remedy sellers, those who keep Rome functioning despite the city's ever-present hygiene challenges. You head down a narrower side street shaded by linen awnings stretched between buildings. This is where the small medical stalls cluster, places that smell like dried plants, fresh mortar scrapings, vinegar, honey, and the faint underlying scent of medicinal hope. Romans don't have hospitals the way modern minds imagine, but they do have a thriving ecosystem of remedies, both practical and experimental. Your favourite healer, Septima, sits behind a wooden counter surrounded by baskets of herbs, jars of powders, and clay bowls labelled in elegant script. She spots you and grins. "You walk like someone whose stomach is debating with their breakfast," she says. "Just a typical Roman debate," you reply, your first joke of the section, as you take a seat on a low stool. Septima has the kind of presence that inspires trust, calm, confident, and armed with enough herbal knowledge to make even the gods reconsider their ailments. She crushes herbs with a mortar and pestle, releasing strong scents into the air: mint, savoury, myrtle, rue, and something sharp you can't quite name. You tell her about your long morning, the bathhouse, the scraping, the tavern meal, the fountain, and your ongoing concerns about water storage. She nods sagely at all of it. "Water," she says, scooping crushed herbs into a bowl. is clean until you store it. Rome is clean until you breathe in. That seems accurate, you say. She hands you a small pouch of dried mint leaves. For your stomach, steep it in warm water. Not hot, warm. Hot water weakens the healing properties. You tuck the pouch into your belt. Her stall is busier than usual today. A man behind you asks for a balm for chafed skin, caused by too much walking in heat. Another wants something to soothe smoke irritation after working in a kitchen. Yet another requests a paste for cuts. He claims he tripped over a chicken, which Septima doesn't believe for a moment, judging by her expression. You glance at her shelves, noticing little jars labelled with terms like Nuceria, Piper nigrum, galbanum, mel, and acetum. These ingredients form the backbone of Roman folk medicine. Pepper, honey, vinegar, and aromatic resins used in everything from wound care to bathing rituals. A mainstream fact surfaces in your mind. Roman medical practitioners often combined herbal knowledge with observational experience, creating treatments that actually worked more often than not. Honey as an antiseptic, vinegar for washing wounds, mint for digestion, laurel for headaches. It's not modern medicine, but it's not nonsense either. But of course, some remedies absolutely are nonsense. A man approaches Septima with a problem involving persistent fatigue. She nods thoughtfully and begins preparing a mixture of herbs, but then she reaches behind her counter and pulls out something that looks suspiciously like powdered oyster shell. You raise a brow. He leans in and whispers, "Doctor in the Subura swears by this." Historians still argue whether that doctor was insane or misunderstood, Septima mutters. You try not to laugh out loud. While she grinds a fresh blend, you wander to a nearby stall run by an older man known simply as the Vinegar Sage. He specializes in tonics, strong ones. You can smell them from 3 steps away. He offers you a small cup of something cloudy and bubbling slightly. "No," you say immediately. "It clears the senses," he insists. "It clears everything," you reply, your second joke of the section. Behind him, bundles of herbs hang from ropes, lavender, thyme, laurel, and bundles of wormwood, its scent sharp enough to cut through the midday heat. A few people pick through the bundles, debating prices. One woman mentions a plague that swept through a nearby port months ago, and how wormwood tea helped drive off the evil vapours. You nod without committing to the claim. As you walk back to Septima's stall, she hands you a small clay jar. "Use this on your skin later," she says. "Olive oil, laurel paste, a touch of vinegar. Keeps the dust from settling so much." "So it's like a dust repellent?" "Exactly." "I'll need a bucket of it," you say, third joke. She smiles and waves you off. You continue down the row of medical stalls, passing a man selling dried figs mixed with herbs for long life, and a woman offering small vials of Nux vomica, a plant so bitter and potent that it should really come with a warning carved in stone. You give her table a wide berth. Further along, an apprentice physician loudly proclaims that he's discovered a new cure for headaches, tying a strip of fabric around the forehead soaked in wine. You have no doubt it helps. Wine helps many things. Clarity of thought is not one of them. A quirky detail catches your eye. Small terracotta figurines shaped like body parts. Toes, stomachs, ears, eyes. These votive offerings are meant for temples, where people leave them in hopes of divine healing. You've used one yourself once. A small terracotta ear when an infection left you half deaf for a week. To your relief, both the healer's remedy and the gods came through. As the heat intensifies, you return to the street with your new herbs and remedies tucked securely into your belt pouch. The afternoon still hums with activity, but you feel prepared. Romans don't have perfect hygiene, but they compensate with an impressive arsenal of plant-based solutions, vinegar washes, and sheer determination. You glance back at the row of stalls, smoke curling up from incense bowls, herbs drying on racks, healers traded wisdom in loud voices, and feel a small spark of admiration. They may not cure everything, but they keep Rome functioning. And you're ready to continue your dusty, fragrant, herbal-infused journey through the rest of the day. Next up, the less pleasant side of a Roman public health. Crowded streets, disease outbreaks, and the city's attempts, successful or not, to keep people alive. You continue walking through the slowly heating streets of Rome, your pouch now pleasantly rattling with the herbs, balms, and mysterious powders Septima gave you. They smell like a travelling garden, and for a moment you entertain the hopeful fantasy that maybe, just maybe, these remedies will shield you from whatever unpleasant surprise the afternoon throws at you. But Rome has a way of reminding you, very quickly, that hygiene isn't just about staying clean. It's also about staying healthy in a city where hundreds of thousands of people breathe the same dusty air, drink from the same water channels, crowd the same markets, and share the same public spaces day after day. And that makes the city uniquely vulnerable to one thing you dread more than the public latrines: disease. As you walk along a busy avenue lined with shops, you pass a group of municipal workers clearing debris from a drainage ditch. They scrape out mud, leaves, and something you hope is simply old kitchen waste. One worker looks up at you and shrugs. "If we don't clean it," he says, "the street floods, and the whole block starts smelling like an abandoned fish stall." "That's motivation enough," you say, your first joke of the section. Rome's drainage system is impressive for its time. The Cloaca Maxima, the massive sewer that drains much of the city, has been operating for centuries. It channels waste and rainwater toward the Tiber and keeps the city from drowning under its own weight. When it works, Rome breathes easier. When it doesn't, well, the city starts to feel like it's sweating through its walls. You turn into a more crowded area where people cluster around vendors selling figs, cheese, and bunches of greens. The air feels thicker here, scented with warm fruit and bodies pressed together. You wipe your brow. The street is alive, loud, and not remotely spaced out. If someone sneezes, that sneeze becomes a public event. At the far end of the market, you see a little commotion, a healer shouting instructions while shooing away curious onlookers. Someone lies on a bench, flushed and shivering, while two others fan him with palm leaves. A third pours vinegar into a shallow bowl and sets it near the patient's feet. You hesitate, not wanting to intrude, but you can't help peeking. The healer mutters something about bad air, heat sickness, and exposure to miasma. Romans believe firmly in the power of foul air to cause illness, and to be fair, they're not entirely wrong. Bad smells often do come from sources that can make you sick. They just don't know about microbes yet. A mainstream historical fact rises unbidden. Rome suffered numerous localized outbreaks of disease: malaria in the marshy outskirts, fevers during hot months, and occasional waves of what we might now call dysentery. The crowded living conditions made it easy for sickness to travel faster than gossip. You step aside as two men carrying a patient on a hastily secured stretcher hurry past, calling for the aid of a nearby temple. In Rome, doctors are helpful, but many people still seek healing from the gods, Asclepius, Apollo, or any deity who seems to specialize in not dying. The heat intensifies as you walk, pressing down on your shoulders. With more people on the move, dust rises in small clouds around your feet. The mixture of heat, dust, smoke, sweat, and animal droppings creates an atmosphere thick enough to taste. You rub a bit of Septima's oil on your neck to counter the dryness. It helps. A little. You reach a public square where a group of officials stand around discussing sanitation. Their expressions are grim, and one gestures emphatically at a pile of refuse gathered near a fountain. "If this keeps building," he says loudly, "we'll have another pest problem." His colleague nods, rubbing his temples. Historians still argue whether Roman sanitation laws were strictly enforced or mostly ignored, but what you're seeing now feels like a mix of both. Some districts take pride in cleanliness, others, cleanliness is an ideal chased but rarely caught. A man beside you mutters, "If we had more slaves sweeping the streets, this wouldn't happen." Another replies, "If people stopped throwing their garbage out the window, this wouldn't happen." Both raise good points. Neither is likely to change. You keep walking, passing a row of small shrines where people leave offerings for protection against fevers and plagues, flowers, bread, tiny clay figurines. One shrine is dedicated to Febris, the goddess of fever herself. Romans believed that appeasing her might spare them from the worst heat-related illnesses. You stop for a moment at her shrine, not because you're superstitious, but because you're practical. A little divine insurance never hurts. You place a small sprig of mint, Septima won't miss it, near the altar, and murmur a quiet hope for a healthy afternoon. Just as you turn away, a familiar voice calls your name. It's your friend Lucius carrying a basket of herbs. He looks flushed and slightly frantic. "You heard?" he asks breathlessly. "Heard what?" "A few people near the river baths fell ill this morning. Stomach cramps, fever. They think the water might be contaminated." Your stomach tightens. But the river sources haven't had rain run off in days. Lucius shrugs helplessly. Someone upstream might have dumped something, or maybe an animal died near the intake point, who knows? You exhale slowly, resisting the urge to check your own pulse. I drank from a fountain earlier. Most fountains are safe, Lucius says quickly. It's the standing pools you should worry about. You lift your pouch slightly. Got remedies from Septima. Good, you might need them. He pauses, then adds, be careful. The last thing you want is to spend 2 days in bed unable to stand. You nod and continue walking, feeling a little more alert now, a little less carefree. Rome is beautiful, powerful, and astonishingly advanced. But it's also fragile, held together by woven rituals of hygiene, civic pride, and daily effort. You cross a bridge spanning one of the smaller water channels, noticing the slight murkiness of the water below. A dog laps at the edge, tail wagging, utterly unaware of the debate happening among humans above its head. You continue onward, feeling the city breathe around you, its people, its water, its heat, its fragility. The day presses on, and in the midst of all this tension around public health and disease, you find yourself heading toward the one place where Rome's hygiene meets its social hierarchy, the bathhouse culture of class, comfort, and quiet competition. You move away from the noise of the sanitation debate and the uneasy murmurs about sickness near the river baths, letting the croaking voices fade into the warm afternoon air. The sun hangs overhead like a slow-burning ember, casting bright streaks of gold across Rome's stones. Your thoughts drift, not toward fear, but toward something more grounding, more familiar. The strange, structured social world of the bathhouses. You already visited one earlier today, but Roman life doesn't revolve around a single bath trip. It revolves around the idea of bathing, of being seen clean, of maintaining good hygiene, and of knowing exactly where you sit in Rome's invisible ladder of status every time you step into a pool. And now you're walking straight toward another bath complex, the Balneae, a smaller neighborhood version of the Grand Thermae. You're not here to wash again, though, honestly, you could. You're here to sit, breathe, and feel the social rhythm of Roman hygiene unfold around you. The entrance is shaded by an awning, under which a few older men sit on stools playing dice and arguing about Senate decrees they clearly haven't read. One waves you in with a friendly nod. You look like someone who needs the tepidarium more than gossip, he says. That obvious, you reply, your first joke of the section, as you slip inside. The Balneae is quieter than the grand bathhouse you visited this morning. Smaller crowds, more familiar faces. No marble floors or grand domes here. Just warm stone, smooth benches, and people who treat this place less like a luxury and more like a second home. You pass through the changing room. A young attendant guards the cubbyholes with hawk-like vigilance. The boy nods as you tuck your belongings into a niche. Slow day, you ask. Only for the wealthy, he replies. Everyone else is cooling off before the heat makes them melt. You step into the tepidarium, and the warm air wraps around you like a soft blanket. A few locals lounge along the walls, some chatting quietly, others dozing, a few simply breathing in the gentle steam drifting from the caldarium doorway. A woman near the corner catches your eye and waves you over. She's reclining with her feet in a shallow basin of warm water. How's the water debate today, she asks. Unsettling, you say. Apparently the river pools might be contaminated. She makes a sympathetic noise. Historians still argue whether the local officials ever took water safety seriously, she mutters, and you can't help but smile. This city could be collapsing and people would still cite historians mid-conversation. You settle onto a bench and close your eyes for a moment. The warmth loosens your shoulders, easing tension you didn't realize you'd been carrying. You inhale deeply, steam mixed with faint scents of mint, lavender and clean stone. This room feels like an exhale, but there's more here than heat. There's hierarchy. A wealthy matron sits across from you, attended by 2 slaves who fan her gently with woven palm fronds. She glances your way, offering a polite nod. Social acknowledgement, not too familiar, not dismissive. You return the nod because you understand the game. Bathhouses are where you quietly reveal and observe social rank, who sits where, who receives service, who can afford special oils, who uses which pools. A quirky detail comes to mind. Romans sometimes scheduled bathing times based on class, gender, or even profession, carefully orchestrating who could mingle with whom. Some bathhouses enforce strict separation, others treated it like a polite guideline. The rules flex depending on the hour, the mood of the officials and the stubbornness of the clientele. You rise and drift into the caldarium, which feels hotter than usual, dense steam rolling from the warm pool in the centre. A group of men sit along the ledge, some athletic workers resting their sore muscles, others wealthier patrons enjoying midday relaxation. The contrast is stark. The workers talk casually, joking about their supervisors and the unbearable afternoon heat. The wealthier men sink deeper into the water, speaking in low tones about debts, politics, and estate matters. Same pool, same steam, completely different worlds. One of the wealthier men notices you hovering nearby and gestures for you to join them. "Good day for cleansing the pores," he says. "And the soul," you add lightly, second joke of the section. He laughs approvingly. You ease into the water. It envelops. You like warm silk, and you feel your pulse slow just slightly. The heat draws out the faint tension from your back, and for a moment everything feels quiet despite the murmurs around you. A pair of older men discuss a rumour about a new bathhouse, being built closer to the Capitoline Hill, boasting marble pools and imported Greek masseurs. One man scoffs, saying, "What's next? Perfumed steam? Heated marble seats?" The other shrugs. "I'd pay for it." You grin. Rome has always believed in upgrading its luxuries, especially where bathing is concerned. In the corner, you see something unusual. A basket filled with small alabaster bottles, each holding a different fragrant oil. One is myrrh, another rose, another spikenard. A wealthy patron gestures for his attendant to fetch one, and the man obliges, gently pouring the oil onto his master's shoulders. The scent wafts through the steam, sweet, earthy, calming. Meanwhile, a worker near the opposite side uses plain olive oil, rubbing it onto his arms himself. Different tools, same purpose. Hygiene is universal, style is not. You exit the caldarium before the heat overwhelms you and return to the tepidarium, where a few people now gather around a musician softly playing a flute. The notes echo lightly, calming, almost dreamlike. Music and steam. Rome knows how to soothe you just when it threatens to overwhelm you. A young man sits beside you clutching a towel. "I always come here after the market," he says. "The dust settles into your bones otherwise." You nod. Rome has a special way of throwing the city at you. "And a special way of washing it off," he replies. You smile, third joke of the section, and stand to retrieve your belongings. Clean, relaxed, lightly scented, and socially recalibrated, you exit the bathhouse, stepping back into the heat with a renewed sense of order. The streets don't feel cleaner, but you do. Still, as you walk toward home, you can't help but think about the next layer of Roman hygiene. Not the water, not the baths, not the perfume. Something deeper, something closer to the skin. Cosmetics, skincare, powders and creams, and the troubling fact that some of Rome's most beautiful ingredients are also some of its most dangerous. You leave the neighbourhood bathhouse with warm limbs, softened skin, and the faint echo of flute music still drifting in your mind. Rome can be chaotic, dusty, aromatic in all the wrong ways, but the culture of grooming, bathing and beautifying is so deeply ingrained that sometimes you forget you're living centuries before anything resembling modern skincare. But the moment you round a corner and pass a small cosmetics stall, you remember. Because ancient Rome had skincare, and makeup, and beauty rituals, and toners, creams, powders, scented balms, and some of them were brilliant, and some of them were, how to put this, slow-motion disasters that people willingly rubbed into their faces. You stop near the stall out of instinct, drawn by the soft glow of jars arranged neatly on a wooden table. The young woman running the booth, Fabiana, greets you with a cheerful wave. "You look refreshed," she says. "Bath day?" "Half the day," you reply, your first joke of the section. "Now I'm trying to stay clean until the sun sets." She laughs knowingly and gestures to her collection. "Then you've come to the right place. Nothing keeps dust away like a good cream." On the table sit jars filled with creams ranging from pale ivory to soft honey colours, powders in small alabaster containers, and perfumes so concentrated they could make a senator pass out from 10 steps away. She opens a jar of cream and applies a tiny dab to the back of your hand. It feels cool, smooth, almost luxurious. "Almond oil," she explains, "mixed with beeswax and a little rose." You inhale gently. The scent is calming, natural, safe. Then she nudges a different jar forward, this one containing a cream so white it practically gleams. You pull your hand back slightly. Is that lead-based? She says matter-of-factly. You stare. She shrugs. People want pale skin. Here's your mainstream historical fact for the section. Romans, especially wealthy women, used white lead creams to lighten their faces and achieve a polished look associated with status, refinement, and leisure. And here's the quirky tidbit. Some of these creams included vinegar that reacted with the lead to form lead acetate, also known as sugar of lead, which went on smoothly and tasted sweet. Not ideal, not safe, not even remotely survivable in the long run. You lift the jar carefully, peering into it like it might try to escape. And people put this on their skin every day? Wealthy women, Fabiana says, and actors, and anyone trying to impress someone far above their means. And they lived? How long after that? She considers. Long enough to keep buying it, not long enough to retire. You snort. Second joke of the section. Fabiana puts the lead cream aside, clearly aware that you're not suicidal. Instead, she offers you a small pot of honey and vinegar cleanser, which actually works. This softens the skin, she says. Cleans too, cuts through dust better than water alone. You try a bit on your wrist. It feels refreshing, tangy, soothing, safe. A win. Next, she shows you a container of powder used to reduce shine on hot days. Mostly chalk, she says, mixed with ground barley, doesn't poison you, always a plus. You nod appreciatively. To your left, another customer tests a small stick of coal for eyeliner. Romans used soot, ash, antimony, and other minerals to darken the eyes, not just for beauty, but also because they believed it protected against the sun and eye infections. Strange, but not entirely wrong. You've heard sailors swear by soot-lined eyes for glare reduction. Further down the stall, a pair of young women debate over rouge powders. One insists on red ochre mixed with beeswax for a natural flush. The other prefers a mixture that includes, shockingly, crocodile dung. You blink. Fabiana leans in. Don't ask, I don't sell it. Smart. You notice a small amphora of olive oil infused with herbs. You unstopper it and inhale a clean, mild, earthy scent. For moisturizing, Fabiana says, also used as a makeup remover. You grin. So Romans invented skincare routines. And ruined half of them with poison, she replies, shrugging. Behind you, two men discuss facial creams loudly enough for half the market to hear. One brags that he uses imported spikenard oil from India. The other insists that goat fat mixed with resin keeps the skin tighter. You try not to laugh. Then you hear the line that completes your historian requirement. Historians still argue whether Cleopatra's beauty tricks were Roman, Egyptian, or complete myth, one man says as he dabs powder on his cheeks. Fabiana rolls her eyes so hard you fear she'll injure herself. As you browse further, she offers you a safer face balm, a mixture of myrtle oil, beeswax, and crushed rose petals. You test a small amount on your cheek. It feels gentle, smells luxurious, and most importantly, doesn't make your skin tingle like it's considering mutiny. Take this one, she says. It won't kill you, and it'll help protect your skin from the city. You buy a small pot and tuck it into your pouch. She hands you a second sample, one infused with cucumber and mint. Use this at night, she advises. It cools the skin, especially after too much sun. You thank her and turn to leave, but she stops you. Oh, and stay away from any powder that smells metallic, she warns. Why? Because it is metallic. You shudder, third joke of the section, and step back into the street. You walk away from the cosmetics stall feeling subtly improved, your skin moisturized, your hair still holding its shape, your scent pleasantly herbal. You feel like a well-groomed citizen of Rome. But as soon as you pass a group of laborers hauling clay bricks under the hot sun, you remember the truth. Hygiene here depends entirely on your job, your wealth, and your daily circumstances, and now you're heading straight toward the working districts, where cleanliness looks very different depending on what you do to earn your bread. You leave Fabiana's stall with your skin lightly gleaming, your pouch heavier with balms and creams, and your mind buzzing with equal parts admiration and existential dread over the amount of lead Roman citizens slather onto their faces. But once you step back into the bustling street, a different reality hits you. Cleanliness in Rome isn't measured by creams and oils alone. It's shaped, more than anything else, by your job. Because in this city, what you do for a living decides what you smell like, how filthy you get, how often you bathe, how people perceive you, and even how much dust you can realistically wash off before the sun goes down. And today, as the afternoon heat grows thicker and the streets pulse with the rhythm of work, you wander straight into the working districts where hygiene becomes a daily negotiation between sweat, grime, necessity, and dignity. You first pass a group of bricklayers, their bodies covered in a fine orange dust that clings to every pore. One wipes his forehead with a cloth that looks like it used to be white 3 governments ago. He grins at you. "You look clean," he says. "For now," you reply, your first joke of the section. He laughs, sending a small cloud of dust puffing off his tunic. Bricklayers rarely get fully clean. Clay dust settles everywhere, into hair, nails, clothing, and most stubbornly, into the small folds behind the ears. Even after a bath, they often leave a faint tint behind. You admire their resilience. Next comes a row of metal workers, hammering glowing metal on anvils. Sparks fly. The air smells like hot iron, sweat, and the smoky breath of the furnace. One of them plunges a blade into water, releasing a hiss of steam. His face is streaked with soot and clean lines where sweat trails down from his brow. Metal workers have their own hygiene challenges. The heat alone means they sweat constantly, and soot embeds into their skin so deeply that a single bath isn't enough. A quirky tidbit you once heard returns to mind. Some metal workers used fine sand mixed with oil as a scrub to remove soot. Like gritty exfoliation, effective, but probably painful. You give them a nod as you pass. One holds up a half-finished knife, admiring the reflection of sunlight. "Want one?" he asks. "Only if it comes with a bath," you say. "That cost extra." You grin, second joke of the section, and continue on. A little farther down the street, the aroma of leather smacks you in the face before you even turn the corner. Ah, yes, the tanners. You brace yourself. Working in a tannery means hygiene becomes a distant dream. The smell is so overpowering it clings to the skin long after a bath. Workers use urine, lime, and tannins to soften hides. The stench is legendary. Some people swear tanners carry their profession on their skin for life. You pass the tannery wall and see workers scraping stretched hides with curved knives, the muscles in their arms rippling with each pull. Their tunics are stained beyond redemption. One worker looks up as you approach, offering a tired smile. "Bath today?" he asks. "Yes." "Enjoy it twice. Once for yourself, once for me." You nod sympathetically. The tanners are heroes of endurance. As you leave the tannery behind, the air smells sweeter. Anything smells sweeter after that. A cluster of merchants sits beneath an awning tallying their accounts. Unlike the manual labourers, these men have cleaner tunics, polished sandals, and scented hair. Their hygiene tells a different story. Status buys cleanliness, or at least the appearance of it. A merchant waves you over. "You look like someone who appreciates fine scents," he says, eyeing the faint herbal aroma still clinging to you from Fabiana's creams. "I appreciate anything that isn't tannery air," you reply, third joke. The merchants laugh knowingly. Next, you pass a team of porters carrying amphorae on their backs. Their shoulders are darkened by both sun and grime. One slips slightly, and the jar clangs loudly against his harness. He steadies it with a grunt, muttering a prayer to Fortuna to prevent breakage. Broken amphorae means spilled wine, and spilled wine means no one gets paid. Porters sweat more than nearly any profession in the city. By midday, their tunics are soaked. By evening, the salt stains form little white maps of effort across their backs. They need the bathhouses desperately, but they often arrive at the end of the day when the water is at its murkiest. You continue walking deeper into the busy streets. A baker pulls hot bread from a clay oven, his tunic dusted in flour. Flour isn't grime exactly. It washes off easily. But the heat of the ovens means he sweats constantly. His forearms gleam with a mix of flour paste and moisture. He offers you a small piece of bread still steaming. You accept, thanking him. "Much cleaner than my hands look," he jokes. "Cleaner than half the city," you reply with a smile. A fish seller leaves his stall to gut a new catch, rinsing his knife in a bucket that's, let's say, not fresh. You step around the puddle forming near his stall. Fishmongers have a unique hygiene signature. Brine, sea salt, and something that could be either ocean air or regret. Then you approach the road leading to the Senate district, where the wealthy and political elite live. Their hygiene looks different. Impeccable tunics, hair meticulously styled, sandals polished, skin oiled and scented. But do not be fooled. Cleanliness here is maintained by slaves, attendants, perfumers, and bathhouse staff, not by personal effort. A wealthy senator passes you, flanked by attendants carrying towels, oil flasks, and a parasol. He gives you a brief, approving glance. One of those looks that says, "You appear clean enough to acknowledge in public." You accept the compliment silently. Yet even among the wealthy, hygiene is complicated. They bathe often, yes. They oil their skin, yes. They wear perfumes imported at ridiculous expense, yes. But they also dine in rooms filled with incense smoke, sleep on cushions rarely washed, and host lavish feasts where sanitation is variable. Cleanliness in Rome looks different depending on your job. But everyone fights the same battles: dust, sweat, heat, water quality, crowded streets, and the perpetual aroma of a city living its fullest, messiest life. You feel the weight of the afternoon settling in. Your skin, though moisturized, has begun collecting a new layer of street dust. Your tunic carries the scents of leather, bread, herbs, and smoke, in a combination that's oddly comforting. But the sun is now past its peak. Shadows stretch long across the road, and as you turn toward home, you know the next challenge is the one Romans deal with every night. Dark streets, chamber pots, mystery puddles, nighttime hygiene, or the lack thereof, and you brace yourself. Evening begins to paint Rome in softer amber tones. The heat eases, the shadows grow longer, and the city shifts into its second personality, one that is quieter, darker, and significantly less hygienic. The daytime dust settles, yes, but now different challenges emerge. Namely, questionable puddles, nighttime odours, and the ever-present danger of something falling from a third-floor window at exactly the wrong moment. You turn into a residential street just as a few vendors close up their stalls. A woman sweeps the threshold of her home, brushing little arcs of dust into the gutter. "Better outside than in," she says, nodding to you. "It'll be back by morning," you reply, your first joke of the section. She laughs, acknowledging Rome's eternal loop of cleanliness and chaos. You keep walking until the sun slips behind the rooftops. The darkness that follows isn't complete. Torches, lamps, and glowing shop fronts speckle the streets. But it's dim enough that you suddenly become aware of the one hygiene hazard every Roman dreads after dusk: chamber pots. Romans don't have indoor plumbing in most homes, and carrying waste downstairs at night is a hassle, so people improvise, usually with a shout of warning first. Usually. You step carefully. The stones are uneven and your sandals feel the slight dampness of recent accidents. Some of these puddles are water, some come from spilled wine, some from washing vegetables, others aren't. A man leaning out from a second-story window shouts, "Aqua!" You reflexively leap sideways. A moment later, a splash hits the street where you'd just been standing. He waves apologetically. "Sorry, wrong bucket." You stare up, horrified. What was in the right one? You don't want to know. You sigh, second joke of the section, and keep moving. This is nighttime Rome. Part charm, part hazard, part gymnastic obstacle course. A cart rattles down the road, wheels splashing through a shallow gutter stream. The air feels more humid here, mixing the warmth of the day with the cool breath of the night. You catch faint scents of cooking fires, damp straw, and the occasional waft of incense drifting from a nearby shrine. You arrive at a narrow alley, one you normally take during the day, and it's different now, darker, quieter, and filled with little pockets of shadow where you can't fully trust what glimmers on the ground. You pause, inhale, and move through with the cautious steps of someone navigating a mythological labyrinth. This alley is infamous for its chamber pot activity. Residents above aren't malicious. They're just tired and unwilling to climb 3 flights of stairs after dinner. A man walking ahead of you carries a small lantern. He swings it gently, casting shaky light on the street. "Careful," he warns. "The puddle near the corner is fresh." You narrowly avoid stepping into it. "Thank you," you say. Historians still argue, he adds casually, whether the night watch actually discouraged people from dumping waste after dark. You blink. You were not prepared for casual historiography while dodging human byproducts. But it's Rome. People casually debate philosophy, poetry, and sanitation in the same breath. As you exit the alley, you pass a small courtyard where several families gather around oil lamps, chatting, eating figs, and trying to cool down. Children play a game involving tossing pebbles into a chalk circle on the ground. One little boy waves at you enthusiastically. You wave back, then notice his sandals. They're damp. He sees your expression and shrugs. I stepped in something weird. You smile gently, forcing your third joke of the section. Welcome to Rome. The boy nods like a wise old philosopher and returns to the game. You keep walking along a wider street now, one lined with taverns and late-night food stalls. The air here is livelier, tinged with roasted nuts and grilled fish. Men sit at wooden tables drinking wine, laughing, arguing, slamming cups down with enthusiasm that suggests they'll regret everything tomorrow morning. But even this district has its own nighttime hygiene quirks. Spilled wine dries sticky on the stones. Fish scraps cling to corners. Smouldering coals sweep smoke into your face as you pass a cook grilling skewers of meat. A tavern owner dumps a basin of water onto the street. You step back just in time. "Just wash water," he calls. "From what?" you shout back. He hesitates. "Don't worry about it." You decide to take his advice. As you continue, you reach the outskirts of the Suburra, one of Rome's densest, noisiest, most colourful districts. Laundry hangs above the street like festive banners. Voices echo from apartment windows. A dog barks somewhere in the distance and someone yells at it to behave. A gentle breeze drifts through. It carries the strange combination of evening bread baking, lamp smoke, wet stone, and the faint sweet scent of night flowers blooming on a balcony above. Rome's nighttime smells aren't all bad. They're just layered. You stop near a fountain, one of the few open this late. A couple washes their hands after eating. A man rinses a wine cup. A woman fills a small jug. You approach and dip your hands in. The water is cooler now, flowing steadily under lamplight. You splash a little on your face. Simple, clean. A tiny reset button for the evening. The fountain's sound competes with faraway laughter and clinking cups. You linger for a moment, appreciating the rare calm. But you know what awaits next. Your insula, your room, your nightly routines before sleep. And you can already feel a faint layer of the day on your skin, dust, smoke, scents, and a hint of tavern air. Rome has thrown everything at you today. And tonight, before bed, you'll have to scrape the city back off again. By the time you leave the evening fountain, your hands feel cooler, your face feels refreshed, and the city feels quieter, as if Rome itself is taking a slow, exhausted breath. Lamp flames flicker in the gathering darkness. The air grows thicker with night smells. Warm stone cooling down, bread finishing in ovens, drifting incense from a nearby shrine, and, less poetically, someone's leftover fish stew reheating somewhere above your head. You start your walk home through the maze of narrow streets, every sound echoing off the walls. Footsteps, distant laughter, dogs barking, the splash of someone dumping a bucket, hopefully clean water, and the occasional creak from an upstairs window. The city feels different now, less chaotic, more intimate. A place where people settle into their routines, quiet, slow, and surprisingly ritualistic. And that includes you. Because once you reach your insula and close the thin wooden door behind you, one final hygiene task awaits, scraping off the Roman world before bed. You climb the narrow, uneven stairs to your floor, passing neighbours returning home, arms filled with baskets and clay jars. A woman balancing a jug nods to you. "Long day?" she asks. "The longest," you reply, your first joke of the section. She chuckles knowingly and disappears into her room. At last you step inside your own tiny space. Even before lighting the small oil lamp, you can smell the faint mixture of your home's scents. Straw mattress, stored water, the lingering perfume from earlier, and just a hint of afternoon dust. Rome enters your room with you, whether you invite it in or not. You sit on the edge of your straw pile, rubbing your feet and shaking out your sandals. A small pile of grit falls to the floor. You sigh. "I swear the streets climb into my shoes," you mutter to yourself. You pull out your pouch and retrieve a small flask of leftover oil, a cloth, and the little jar of balm Fabiana insisted you buy. Tonight's routine begins with a simple wipe down. A bit of warm water poured into a clay bowl, splashed lightly onto your face, neck, and arms. The water glints in the lamp's glow, clear enough, though you can see a speck or two floating in it. Rome's signature. You dip your cloth into the water and wipe your skin, starting with your forehead. The cloth comes away slightly darkened. Dust, smoke, a bit of sweat. You work down your arms, then your neck, gently rubbing along the hairline where the barber's pomade still clings faintly. Next comes the scraping, the bedtime version. Not the vigorous public bathhouse scraping with bronze strigils, but a gentler one you can do sitting quietly in your room. You take your small personal strigil from its leather sleeve and warm it briefly between your palms. It's simple bronze, slightly curved, worn from years of use. You rub a thin layer of oil onto your arms and then run the strigil slowly downward. Tiny ribbons of oil and grime gather on the blade, glimmering in the lamplight. You scrape your legs next, then your shoulders. Each stroke feels like erasing the day. It's dust, it's sweat, it's smells, it's heat. Not a deep clean, but a nightly reset. As you work, you think about the odd comfort of this ritual. It's calming, rhythmic, predictable. A small moment of peace carved out from the chaos outside your door. A quiet knock sounds on your wall, the neighbour's signal that her baby is finally asleep. It's not a warning, just a friendly message. No sudden loud noises, please. You tap back gently. Not that your scraping ever makes noise, but it's nice to be acknowledged. When you finish scraping, you take a damp cloth and wipe the strigil clean. You remember the quirky tidbit you heard earlier at the bathhouse. Some Romans believed that the oily scrapings of athletes had medicinal powers. You glance at your own scraped-off mixture and laugh softly. No cure here, you whisper, your second joke, unless someone desperately needs dust from 3 markets and a tavern. You put the strigil away and open the small balm Fabiana gave you. The scent is gentle, rose, myrtle, and a little mint. You smooth it onto your face. It cools your skin, easing the heat still clinging to your cheeks. A thin coat goes on your arms and hands as well. Romans loved ending the day with oil, not just for moisture, but as a psychological exhale. You stretch your legs out across the straw mattress, rolling your shoulders. Outside, someone sings a soft tune, maybe slightly off-key but pleasant. A couple whispers somewhere, their voices drifting through thin walls. A dog barks once, then settles down again. The city becomes a tapestry of tiny sounds. You reach for your water jug and pour a small sip into a cup. The water is warm now, carrying the faint dryness of clay, but it soothes your throat. As you sip, you hear a pot clatter upstairs. Then a man mutters something that is unmistakably a complaint about the gods, chamber pots, or possibly both. Night brings its own smells, as unavoidable as the daytime ones. A faint whiff of smoke rises from a neighbour's cooking fire. Street refuse warms slightly in the night air. Herbs hang from your window, drying on a string, adding the soft scent of bay leaves and mint to your room. Not perfect, but better than nothing. You lie back slowly, adjusting your tunic to keep it from bunching under your shoulder. The straw rustles. A few pieces poke at your back. You shift again. Then comes the final little ritual, rubbing your hands together with a drop of oil and letting the scent drift upward toward your face. It's subtle but comforting. Your own private aromatherapy in a city that smells like everything except peace. Just before fully settling in, you whisper a small prayer to whichever deity oversees clean sleep, if such a god exists. If not, maybe you've just invented one. But before you drift off, you take one more tiny step in Roman nighttime hygiene, brushing dust from your hair with your fingers. You do it carefully because even now, with the city going quiet, grains of the day cling stubbornly to you. You think briefly about tomorrow, about the fountains, the baths, the scraping, the dust, the perfumes, the kitchens, the streets, the chamber pots. Rome will cover you all over again, and you'll peel it away, all over again. You breathe out slowly, letting your eyelids sink. Almost time for sleep. Almost. But one more thing remains. The final descent into a full Roman night. The lamp burns low beside you, its flame flickering softly like a tired heartbeat. Your room has settled into that warm, shadowy stillness that only comes after a long day in ancient Rome, a day of baths, dust, perfumes, scraped skin, crowded streets, questionable puddles, cooking smoke, and the strange, stubborn rhythm of a city that never truly sleeps. But you are ready to, almost. You sit up slowly, stretching your back until you hear a small crack that feels both alarming and satisfying. The last layer of evening air drifts in through your window. Cooler now, calmer, touched with hints of night flowers and distant cooking fires going out. Somewhere down the street, a few last conversations mumble into the dark. Rome exhales. You rise from your straw mattress and cross the small room to shut your window shutters halfway. Not fully. Romans learned long ago that closing them too tightly traps heat and smells inside. You want the night air, even if it carries the faint residue of the city's chaotic perfume. Your sandals rest near the door, dusty from the day's wandering. You pick them up and shake them gently. A sprinkle of grit falls out and scatters across the floor. You sweep it aside with your foot. As always, more will replace it by sunrise. You pour the last usable sip from your water jug and swirl it around your mouth. It's warm, slightly earthy from the clay, but refreshing enough. You set the empty jug down carefully, tilting it to avoid catching the sediment that sleeps at the bottom. You'll refill it in the morning when the fountains flow cold and the neighbourhood stirs awake. Next, you wipe your face once more with your damp cloth, catching the final trace of dust that inevitably resettled in the minutes since you lay down. The cloth feels cool against your temples. You let it linger there, breathing slowly. Your skin still carries Fabiana's balm, rose, myrtle, mint. Comforting, familiar. A soft thud from upstairs startles you, followed by an annoyed whisper. Then silence again. Rome's buildings are never truly quiet. They creak and breathe like people. You blow out your lamp, leaving only moonlight seeping faintly through the shutters. In the dimness, your room feels softer. The edges blur. The sounds outside slow. You sit on the edge of your sleeping mat and ease yourself down, adjusting the straw until it settles under your shoulders. A few rough bits poke gently at your ribs. You shift once, then let the mattress be what it is. Romans don't ask for comfort. They ask for rest. Your hands glide once more along your arms, checking for any lingering patches of oil or grit. You find a tiny ridge of dust near your wrist, rub it away, and smile to yourself. Not perfect. Good enough. Outside, someone closes a wooden door. A dog whines softly in the distance. A pair of late drinkers wander by singing off-key. Their voices fade into the night. You breathe deeply, and as your eyes drift closed, the entire day plays back in slow, warm echoes. Fountains, scraping bronze, bathhouse steam, herbal stalls, evening smells, lamp smoke, familiar streets. The whole patchwork of Roman life settling around you like a blanket. You exhale, feeling your muscles soften, your thoughts quiet. Rome is still awake, but you are ready to drift. And now, everything slows. The room grows softer around you, the walls fading into gentle shadow as your breathing settles into its natural rhythm. The faint night breeze moves through the shutters in slow, careful strokes, brushing against your skin like a whisper meant only for you. The day, its noise, its dust, its steam, its laughter, draws further and further away, slipping behind the horizon of your thoughts. Nothing presses on you now. Nothing waits. Every sound is softened by distance. A murmur from a neighbour, a quiet footstep in the corridor, the far-off hum of Rome dreaming beneath its stars. You feel the last traces of warmth from your skin fade into the coolness of the night. The straw beneath you shifts subtly, shaping itself around your weight, holding you in a way that feels almost like an embrace. You let your arms relax beside you. You allow your breath to lengthen, deepen, slow. In this stillness, the whole city feels hushed, its edges smoothed, its harshness blunted, its energy finally giving way to the calm that settles after a long wandering day. You imagine the bathhouse steam drifting up toward the night sky, the quiet fountains running steady in the dark, the rooftops cooling under the moon's silver glow. You let these images settle into a soft, hazy pool at the centre of your mind. No urgency, no effort, just the quiet rhythm of Rome at night and the deeper quiet within you. With each breath, your body feels heavier, warmer, safer, like sinking slowly into calm water. You don't need to hold the day anymore. You don't need to think. You're already drifting. Let the night carry you the rest of the way.